Now, the Subaru Crosstrek has been around for a while, and the magnificence of it is how vastly different the beginning and ending generations are. It can either be your manual beater, or your brand new, nice, shiny new car. So today we're going to go over everything you need to know about the Subaru Crosstrek. We're going to go about engines, issues, miles per gallon, towing, generations, what you should buy, the prices that you should be expecting. So yeah, stick around for that. But before we do that, it's time for me to talk about its history. Where did it come from? Where did the idea originate from? The Subaru Impreza Outback Sport was a trim level of the Subaru Impreza that lifted it off the ground, gave it some roof racks, and some shiny paint and painted fenders. The reason why they called it the Outback was you have to remember the legacy and where the naming comes from. Back then, the Subaru Outback wasn't its own model. There was a Subaru Legacy, and then a Subaru Legacy Outback. The Subaru Legacy Outback, the Outback carried kind of a semi-wagon, but also a semi-off-road, connotation to it. So it was the Subaru Impreza hatchback or wagon, that's where the Outback came in, and then they added Sport, the Subaru Impreza Outback Sport, the Sport for the more off-road capabilities of it. So that's why it was called the Impreza Outback Sport, not because the Outback was some off-road SUV, that's just what they called their wagons, much like how some car companies will call their wagons the XL of the car, whatever car name it is. The first Subaru Impreza Outback Sport came out in the United States in 1997. That was the first year the trim level was offered. Now, this was actually kind of a response to the growing SUV craze. Now, back then it wasn't, RAV4s and all that stuff that came out. Actually, what first came out and inspired the SUV craze was the Jeep Cherokee. You want to know what else also came out this year that I've talked about a lot? The Lexus RX, the first SUV to really make an SUV more comfortable, right? The Jeep Cherokee was like a truck, like the bullet holes on the side of it on the Goonies. It was just a truck, essentially, with a covered bed and 5 seats. I believe there was a 7-seat variant, but that's not important to this video. It was a response to that new change of durable off-road vehicles. Subaru saw it as an opportunity to make smaller sedan-like versions that the US buyers would be more accustomed to, because remember, sedans were king back then, but make them a little bit more off-roady and small. Like an off-roady Toyota Corolla. Toyota's response to this happened in 2 ways. Again, not really important, but we'll go over it nonetheless. They had the Toyota RAV4 that came out in 1994, which was more rugged, more small, so it took the Subaru's idea of being small, but swapped it for cheap. And then you had the Lexus RX, which the design eventually caught on for most modern SUVs now. It was more modern, it was more luxurious. That's really what people wanted, a sports utility vehicle that could also be a nice new luxury car. This was Subaru's iteration of it. The last generation of the Subaru Impreza Outback Sport was in 2011, which also coincided with the final year of the 4th generation Subaru Impreza. Now, here in the United States, in 2012, sold as a 2013, Subaru came out with the Subaru XV Crosstrek. Now, you may ask, why Crosstrek and why XV? Well, what does X stand for? If we look at cross country and Christmas, Xmas, X stands for cross. So it's essentially XV, cross vehicle, or crossover, right? Remember, crossover wasn't a widely used term back then. You may also ask how they came up with the term Crosstrek. Well, a crossover, right, which was still a term back then, it just wasn't widely used. The crossover is like journeying, right? You want to know what else is journeying? Crosstrek. So instead of just a crossover where you're going over something, it's the Crosstrek. You're trekking through it. That's how they came up with the name Subaru XV for cross vehicle, cross vehicle, Crosstrek. Simple. Just a little fun fact, in 2010, believe it or not, in some regions out of the United States, the XV name also comes from this car. I bet you'll never guess the name. The Subaru Impreza XV, that was the name of it. So crossover, you can see it's got those big black fenders, but it's not as crazy as the Subaru Impreza Outback Sport. Now, you may think that the Subaru Impreza Outback Sport was probably not sold in these regions for naming rights. No, it was actually sold alongside this. So in 2010, you could either get a Subaru Impreza Outback Sport or the Subaru Impreza XV. These were both sold in the same regions. In Japan, this was called the Subaru Impreza XP, but it's just a weird, quirky piece of history, so that to really help you understand where that XV comes from, because that's one of the questions people always get about the Subaru Outback, especially the first generation. Where did the XV come from? Alright, the fun part begins. Now that we've covered the general history of the Subaru Crosstrek, let's move into the generations. Now, we're not going to get into prices, that'll happen later, but mark down whatever generation you like the most and then the second most for the prices that will happen later. If you're wondering why I disjointed this, it's because a 2-segment video just seems kind of weird. This is the 2012, really sold as a 2013, Subaru Crosstrek, Subaru XV Crosstrek. To me, the styling kind of looks like a wet frog. This Subaru Crosstrek on the higher trim level featured leather seats. Now here's where I talk about radios. The radios weren't great from this era of Subaru. Subaru didn't really know what they were doing. By this point, everyone else had kind of seen it coming, right? Toyota saw the screen craze coming. They in fact invented it with the Toyota Prius, at least to some extent. Nissan, all those other people had figured it out. Subaru hadn't, so they just bought off-the-shelf Pioneer and other units and slapped a Subaru badge on them. Not something fantastic to do. So the quality of those radios really wasn't great, and that's one of the only reasons that I would suggest getting technically the first generation of the Subaru Crosstrek, but really the facelifted version of the Subaru XV Crosstrek. Now, behind the rear seats on the Subaru XV Crosstrek, it had 22.3 cubic feet. Now, the interesting part is when we go over to the Subaru Impreza hatchback, which is what it was based on, it had a full 23.5 cubic feet behind the rear seats. Now, what is that difference? Let's go again. Let's go behind the folded seats. For the Subaru XV Crosstrek, it had 53.9 cubic feet behind the folded seats, so just behind the first row. And then on the Subaru Impreza hatchback, it had 53.8 cubic feet. So why does the Crosstrek have less room behind the seats for cargo? It has a sloping roof that cuts down on that a little bit. So it's not smaller, the frame isn't really that different. Its roof just slopes more than the Impreza wagon, or hatchback, depending on what you like to call it. All Subaru XV Crosstreks featured a 2-liter flat-4 boxer engine. They had port injection. They had 148 horsepower at 6,200 RPM and 145 pound-feet of torque at 4,200 RPM. All right, now here is some photos from the pamphlet that I took. Before it drank the full Kool-Aid of the Subaru naming scheme for trim levels, it had two versions, the XV Crosstrek 2.0i Premium and the XV Crosstrek 2.0i Limited. The Limited got leather. That's pretty much one of the main differences. It also got a touchscreen and navigation on most models. Now, I've put the colors up here. We got some fun colors, some lilacs, a nice, what is that? Desert khaki. Very appealing. We got some nice colors here, and you could either get leather or cloth in either cream beige or black. I'm personally a fan of the cream beige, but the black aged better in the fabric. Now we're talking about the first-gen Subaru hybrid ever, the Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid. But here's something interesting I bet you didn't know. The differentiation between the Subaru XV Crosstrek, which technically only had one generation, and the Subaru Crosstrek, which technically began at 2014, there's technically a little bit of a loophole. Because when I'm so used to talking about Toyotas, because when the Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid came out, there was no XV. So technically, it was the first generation of the Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid, but one could argue that it was actually the first generation of the Subaru Crosstrek altogether, because it was the first Subaru Crosstrek without the XV nameplate, which is the differentiator between the Subaru XV Crosstrek and the Subaru Crosstrek. Watch out for that XV, though, because when you're shopping for a used car, they will differentiate which generation you get, the first generation non-facelifted and the first generation facelifted, completely on those two letters, so watch out for that if you're planning on buying a first generation. XV or non-XV. Wax on, wax off. Okay, now here's where things for me get interesting. If you're just an average Subaru Crosstrek buyer, you probably don't care. But if you're a Subaru Crosstrek enthusiast or a Prius enthusiast, you're going to find this really interesting. So first of all, if you're just a regular buyer, don't get the hybrid. The hybrid's a lot of extra maintenance. The batteries are dying. It has barely any aftermarket support. Remember, this wasn't a Toyota hybrid Synergy drive system. In fact, it was way far from it, and I'll get to that in a second. Like I said before, I keep repeating myself. But yeah, don't get it. Just get the normal Crosstrek. It's old enough where you're never going to be able to find another battery, and you only get 3 miles per gallon more than the regular Subaru Crosstrek. Anyway, it's time for us nerds to geek out. Okay, this had 8 miles of drivable EV range, but guess what? It was only in creep mode. The battery for this was 0.5 kilowatt hours compared to the 2011 Toyota Prius's 1.31 kilowatt hours, so it was a weaker battery. The interesting part for this is that the motor, you know how the Toyota hybrid Synergy drive system used a planetary gear system? That way, both the engine and the motor could drive it at the same time. Imagine an alternator, make it a little bit bigger, and add a belt chain to it. That's essentially what this hybrid system was. The motor was only 10 kilowatts, that's 13.4 horsepower, compared to the Toyota Prius is 6 60 kilowatts, which is 80 horsepower. So those 8 miles of range were actually only doing creep speeds, like parking, like maybe 10 miles an hour, less than that speeds. Meanwhile, the Prius could do up to like 1 mile in EV mode, just driving normally, just like normal everyday driving. It could handle that. This thing could not do that at all. That's the only reason why it got like 28 miles per gallon higher than the regular Crosstrek, was because the EPA doesn't measure parking lot speeds, and the battery was also really small. It was a 0.55 kilowatt hour. I already said that. Essentially, it was designed for durability and being rugged. Again, the battery threw all that away. But it was so different. It had a smaller motor, smaller battery, less miles per gallon. So it's really not worth it, but I just find it interesting the way that the two companies went about it. Subaru went about it from durability and reliability and that small little motor there, mainly for regen braking, right? It was just to help assist the motor. But it could also drive the car purely. It was essentially an alternative to the hybrid Synergy drive system without being a mild hybrid, where the engine, technically a hybrid. I still hate the Honda Insight. Like the Honda Insight, where the motor could not drive the car independently of the engine, right? With this, technically it could. Sometimes you wouldn't want to, but it could. And that's most things. So, credit where credit is due. Now, one thing I can tell you is that differentiating Subaru Crosstreks from this era is hard. It's seriously hard, because people do stuff. People, sometimes they like the hybrids, and they'll find other geeky people to buy their hybrids. A lot of times, they just want to dump them. They just want to get them out of there as quick as they can. Quite frankly, I don't really blame them, because the batteries die, no aftermarket support. So here's how you can tell a hybrid from just your average run-of-the-mill Subaru Crosstrek from that time period. Also, if you've noticed, this was a terrible time to do a voiceover without stuff, because we just switched footage. I'm playing the first footage again. Guys, there's only so much B-roll that I can use without violating the rules, for this. So, we're just gonna have to keep reusing it, okay? I hope you don't mind too much if you were invested in the plot of watching the maybe inch of B-roll there that was in the corner there. Anyway, let's continue. Two big features. It was the rims and the taillights. Every single Subaru Crosstrek hybrid had clear taillights as opposed to the red colored-in ones, and that were LED. And they also had these 5-spoke colored-in wheels as opposed to the very, I don't know how to describe them, archy, silvery wheels of the Subaru Crosstrek. So those are the ways on how you can tell a Subaru Crosstrek, we're way in the woods here, a Subaru Crosstrek hybrid from a regular Subaru Crosstrek. I don't know, I thought I needed to add that, but I do, and I'm glad that I did. So, sue me. Don't sue me. Alright, well, let's get into the facelifted version. Now, the Subaru Crosstrek kind of pairs with the Impreza a lot, and even still today. So, it's really based off of the Impreza hatchback, which is surprisingly different from the sedan. But, essentially, in 2015, they decided to update the older, outgoing 4th generation Impreza to the new, luxurious 2015 Impreza. They just changed, some stuff. They tuned the motor, actually, differently. This is true on the, Crosstrek. Essentially, all they did was some ECU magic. They retuned it, and it went from 148 horsepower to 152. Like, 4 horsepower more. So it's not really that different. But they facelifted it. But here's the thing. They didn't facelift it at the same time as the Subaru Impreza. You have to remember, Subaru is a decently small company. They don't want to be retooling stuff at the same time. So they just decided to delay it for a year. So meanwhile, the Subaru Impreza got, updated in 2015. The Crosstrek waited conservatively until 2016 for its update. And guess how much it took off the 0 to 60, that extra 4 horsepower. I know, you're stunned. That's basically the entire electric motor. Not crapping on the hybrid. Love the hybrid. Still a great car. Wouldn't own it personally. Guess how much? Okay, so for reference, the base 2013 Subaru Crosstrek had a 0 to 60 time of 8.6 or 5 seconds. 8.6 seconds. Guess what the 0 to 60 time of the updated model was? 8 seconds. Look, guys, wow, if it wasn't a Bugatti before, it's a Bugatti now. That thing, man, I bet it's a world record. Thank God they did that. We really needed it. Now, here's also where I'm going to tell you how to differentiate it before we get into the new features that they added and the new screen, which is really, it really needed it real bad. They finally figured out how to build screens, or at least steal the technology from Toyota. That's not allegations. That's a joke, okay? Joke alert. First, you have the fangs, that little, perfectly symmetrical corner thing. I don't really like that. I liked how, it was kind of like a slash on the Impreza. It was like a perfectly square, box-looking thing on the Crosstrek. That was a weird decision. Yeah, here's how you can tell the difference. and it's a difference that some people like and some people hate. Okay, all they did was bore out the wheel. They just took the spokes and hollowed them out. They also made them, I believe, 17 inches instead of the base 16s on the previous model. Now, people don't really like these wheels. Yeah, 17 inches. People don't like these wheels for a magnitude of reasons, and it's crazy. You wouldn't believe me if I told you this, which I am about to. People, like, they will buy wheels from the XV Crosstrek to put on their 2018 Crosstreks, 2016 Crosstreks, because technically it was sold up until 2018, so I was kind of correct the first time. They will do that just because, first of all, when off-roading, those new hollowed-out spokes carry dirt a lot more, and it's a pain in the ass for car washers. That's one reason I heard. A second reason was that they didn't like how it felt cheaper, because instead of having that thick, like, aluminum spoke, you had these little thin little weedy ones there, which they didn't like, and also they didn't like the ride quality of the 17 inches versus the 16s. I have actually driven both of these. I didn't put it on video or anything, just happened over my lifetime, and I can tell, granted, it was like 3 or 4 years apart. I mean, how often do you ride in a Subaru Crosstrek without owning one? And they're fine. I mean, I can't really tell a difference, but I think there was a little bit more road noise, so just keep that in mind. You know, if you see like a 2016, if you really care that much, just buy new wheels for it. It doesn't really matter that much. They also updated the hybrid. The hybrid got a brand new updated version, so yay! You know, truly a car that's going to stay around for a long time. I mean, they took all the effort of retooling and everything and continuing to make the wheels in the hybrid system and the special variant for the hybrid. Surely they're going to keep it around. Well, they canceled it in 2016, the same year that they updated it. Well, now that we're done talking about this hybrid, we're never going to talk about this hybrid again, so all you people that just want to buy, all you people, very accusatory, all the people who just want to buy a normal Subaru Crosstrek, rejoice. Well, I'll finally shut the hell up about the stupid hybrid, alright? Let's move on to the regular Crosstrek from this generation and talk about why it was decently good. Well, if you came here for the sound system recommendations, I have bad news for you because I've covered it up with the new screen, but here are the trim levels. We have 2.5, we have 2.0i, because again, it has a 2-liter engine, so it'd be 2.0i. I'm used to saying 2.5i because I just did a video on the Forester. We have the 2.0i Premium, the 2.0i Limited, the Hybrid, and then the Hybrid Touring. Also, you see that screen in the corner? That's why you want to get the updated version. That is the only reason why you should pick this version over the other version, except for maybe the Hybrid. It's great. The screens from this era were great. Subaru finally figured out how to build screens instead of the Harman that's overshooting it. The Pioneer, just basic screens that they had before. I mean, seriously, test drive one. Test drive an XV Crosstrek and then a first-gen Crosstrek. Again, technically the same thing. And you'll see a big difference in the screen. And the screen alone is worth it. But if you're going to upgrade the screen, it doesn't matter, you know. And they both still came with a manual on the base trim. Yeah, I believe you could have it with a CVT or a manual. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the next generation. Wait, I lied, there's colors. There was also like a weird yellow and an orange and a green and a blue for the hybrid. But these were the colors for that generation. Again, leather, cloth, and here are the dimensions for the two past the XV and the first gen. I have to say it. Still technically the same thing. It's like I have this, like this thing washes over me. Like I just have to say it. I have to be right, you know. I've been wrong in the past. I have to get it right this time. Yeah. Now let's move on to the next generation. Alright, well, this is the second generation, and you can tell it's different from the first generation and the XV, technically still the same, because it looks completely different. Now, really quickly, bad idea alert, unless it's the top trim level. We'll get to the trim levels in a minute. Don't buy it. Subaru had a massively bad idea. Now, the bad idea alarm only goes off usually in my videos, considering this is the first time I've actually done it. And I'll tell you why in a second. If it went off for the entire world, it would literally never stop. The reason why is this has direct injection. Now, you probably don't know what that does, and I already loaded all the assets onto the computer for the video, but now I'm going to explain direct injection versus port fuel injection again. So I'm going to go leave and get the graphic and then put it back up on the screen. Okay, bye. All right, here it is. The fuel injector. Okay, I've gotten into it. Most people don't know engines. I need to remember that. Okay, so for your piston, you have the piston there. This is the combustion chamber, right? You have two little tubes. The two tubes, one is the intake, one is the outtake. The intake brings the air mixture into the engine. The outtake takes all the burn crud and gets it out and ready for the next thing. Then you've got the spark plug, which is always in the middle. That just clicks and clicks and clicks and clicks and clicks and start the combustion, the explosion, which pushes the piston back down, which turns the thing, I think it's the crankshaft, which turns it, I think it's the crankshaft, which turns the crankshaft and then eventually gets to the transmission and the wheels, right? But you need fuel. I mean, that's the thing that's burning. If this entire cycle was happening, the spark isn't doing, there's nothing to ignite, except for maybe some oil, I think. Probably not. Fuel injection, direct injection, is where the fuel is injected directly into the combustion chamber. Port fuel injection is where it's injected into the intake section there. Now, there's a few issues with direct injection. First of all, in the intake, it gets built up with crud. It gets built up with this just garbage, like carbon and stuff like that. And that cakes onto it. And the gasoline helps to clean it off. You know, you ever wash your hands with gasoline? Or is it diesel? I'm contradicting myself. You wash your hands with gasoline. That's something that you do, right? Like you feed rum to babies when they're teething. Is it rum? Anyway. Essentially, that's why it helps. When it's in the combustion chamber, it's a lot because you can control like where it happens, and they're advanced. And you've got timing systems. So, like depending on the economics of your engine, you know, you get more miles per gallon and more 0 to 60, but barely, just a tiny, barely immeasurable bit. Now, there's a few questions that you're probably going to have. First of all, why doesn't crap build up on the exhaust manifold, on the exhaust tube? That's probably what it's called. I'm not an engine expert, okay? Why doesn't it happen there? Well, the thing is, the temps are much higher, so it burns all the crud off. You know your engine, yeah, you have an engine in your oven. You know your engine, I am too tired to be making videos. You know your oven, when you set it to clean and it burns all the crap off into dust? That's what this does, and it just blows out of the engine, right? The issue is, the intake is much cooler than the exhaust, right? So it can actually cake on. Now you may ask, well, if it's the intake, then why is there crap getting into it? You know, typically in an intake that's intaking air into somewhere, it's technically the exhaust. It's pulling air out of it. So where does it get? Well, think about how fast your engine moves. I mean, click, 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 every single thing just constantly going all the time. So even though there's technically air moving out of it, particles still get up into that thing when it's blowing fuel out. Now, what are the dangers of this? Like, why should you care? I mean, there's a bunch of this jargon, hybrids, EVs, all this crap, that nerds like me create to make your life more difficult, to make it easier in some minute way. So why should you care about this? Well, the carbon builds up, and you need to clean it, and it's really annoying. Yeah, so it burns up, and there's a few issues that it can cause. First, you need to get it cleaned like every 40,000 miles, which I don't know if you've ever taken an engine apart before. Every 30 or 40,000 miles. I don't know if you've ever taken an engine apart before. It's pretty expensive, so you really don't want to have to do that. It's not like a full engine block repair, but it's not great. Also, you know that little, like, springy thing that opens and closes to let the intake air on? Well, you know how it gets caked on your engine? It gets caked up there, too. And it can't really move up and down and up and down and up and down if it needs to when it's caked with shit. So sometimes it can cake open, and that causes fires, a bunch of not happy stuff. So you either get it cleaned or you deal with that. So don't get this generation of Subaru Outback. But, this is a huge but. The 2021, the year of the update, that's right, we've skipped ahead a whole bunch because it didn't really change, because we're just going to go over this one and they all still apply to the old one. For the 2021 Sport and Limited trims. This is important because they had a 2.5 liter engine. Now, the car companies do this all the time, and somehow by making the car better in 2019, they made it so much worse. The 0 to 60 time went from 8.6 seconds to 9.8 seconds. That is one slow dog. The 2.5 liter, however, brought it back up to about 8 seconds flat. That's like 2 seconds off the 0 to 60 time. These cars were like the worst Subaru Crosstreks. In terms of reliability, they were semi-okay. The 0 to 60 sucked. The speed sucked. The towing wasn't great. They were weak. And the reason why? They were so much heavier than the first generation. The second gen was so much heavier. So if you are going to get a second generation at all, that's why I'm steering you away, right? We looked at these, we talked about them. Oh, look, they look completely different. And then I talked to you about, direct injection. You probably already knew that. And I'm just steering you away. I'm just steering the herd away from that wolf, okay? You do not want one of those, okay? Those are not good. If there's one in your area, I would get a first gen over a second gen without the 2.5 liter. And the 2.5 liter had port fuel injection, so you don't have to worry about cleaning the crud off your things. And the best part about having is, Subaru owners. I love Subaru. Subaru owners are great. I'm making a video on the car, okay? But a lot of times they don't maintain their cars. Do you really trust someone people that can't put oil in their cars to really take apart their engine every 30,000 miles to clean off the crud debris on the end? Do you really trust them to do that? Of course you don't. So, of course, you're going to be the one paying for it. And they're just slow as hell. Seriously. And this isn't from a car guy point of view. This isn't, well, I'm a car guy and I hate slow cars. The quality wasn't good. They weren't great. I mean, there's really no use in even looking at a pre-facelift second generation. They were just not great. All right, back to this one. Now, I just want to put a quick disclaimer, because I was a little bit rude to it in the last section. All right, if you own one of these, it's a great car. It can be a great car, even though it's a little bit on the slow side, all right? The only thing you have to do is something that humans somehow cannot figure out. You have to maintain your car. I'm sorry, you really have to. That direct injection, ugh, rough. Anyway, we're moving on to this one. Not really moving on, but staying here on the pre-facelifted version. You had 3 trims: the Crosstrek, the Crosstrek Premium, and the Crosstrek Limited. They finally removed the 2.0i from the equation, and you got an all-new Subaru-y interior. Much better touchscreen, new climate controls, pretty basic compared to the previous model. Nothing really new to say here. You can look at the options down there. Let's move on to the facelifted 2021. All right, for the updated 2021, there are 4 trims. There's the Crosstrek Premium. Both of those, again, they can be fine cars if you want them to be, but I wouldn't go with them. I would either go for the Crosstrek Sport or the Crosstrek Limited. Also, here's the dimensions of the car. If you're looking at rear cargo space and such, you can zoom in on the video. And the colors, I really like the yellow. Same as last year, except last year didn't have the yellow. And they removed the tan cloth. Well, technically they did that for the entire second generation. Technically, they did. So, yeah, sad to remove the tan cloth and the tan leather, but we got dark gray. So who needs tan, classic, beautiful, nice tan when we can have corporate vinyl chair gray? All right, now we're doing the specs for both the plug-in hybrid version, the regular 2-liter, and the 2.5-liter, which is very classy. So, for the regular, they got 28 city, 33 highway, 30 combined, just for your regular 2-liter. For the hybrid, you got 90 miles per gallon MPGe if you plugged it in, and 35 miles per gallon combined if you just did nothing and didn't plug it in and just drove it like a regular hybrid, And, of course, filled it with gas. For horsepower, the regular 2-liter got 152 horsepower. The 2.5-liter got astounding 182 horsepower, and the new electric one, not electric, hybrid, got 148 horsepower. So I made a little spreadsheet here, I'm reading it off. For the torque, the 2-liter got a 148 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM, and the hybrid got 134 pound-feet of torque at 4,400 RPM. And then for the 0 to 60, the regular car got a 0 to 60 of around 9.2 to 9.8 seconds. The 2.5-liter got a 0 to 60 time of about 8.2 to 8 seconds. And then the hybrid got a 0 to 60 time of about 8.3 seconds. So there you go. There's all the information on this model. Also, all the specifications for the 2-liter will apply to all of the non-facelifted second generation. Now, let's get into the modern-day generation. All right. Well, here we are. Here are the new trim levels for the brand new one. We have the base, the premium, the sport hybrid. I'll talk about the hybrids in a minute. The limited hybrid, and the all-new wilderness. Woo woo, wilderness in the house. Let's talk numbers. So, for the 2-liter Boxer Flat 4, that has a 0 to 60 time of 9.1 seconds. It also has the 2.5-liter Boxer Flat 4, which, guess what? It has direct injection. But it's new, so you shouldn't really have to worry about it that much. I highly doubt any of these have over 40,000 miles, unless they've been testing cars. That has a 0 to 60 time of 8.1 seconds. So, a little bit slower. Now, you may be guessing, well, how are those, a little bit lower than the previous? Because it's heavier again. I mean, come on. You gotta catch up with this. I mean, that's why the direct injection didn't do anything, because it's much heavier. For the miles per gallon, it gets 29 combined EPA for the smaller engine, the 2-liter, and it gets 29 miles per gallon for the 2.5 liter, so not much of a difference there. In horsepower, 152 for the small 2-liter, 182 for the big 2.5 liter, not really huge, is it? And then for the torque, big torque difference for the 145 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM for the 2-liter, and 175 pound-feet of torque at 3,700 RPM. The new hybrid is the ugliest Crosstrek. Man, the wind is crazy today. Yeah, the hybrid is hideous. The 4 spokes is ugly. The fangs, I mean, the fangs on the facelifted second gen were kind of okay. These fangs, they're already a lot. And those wheels, oh, they're so ugly. I can't even look at them. It just looks like a Kia on bad steroids with tiny little headlights. Okay, it's the ugliest car I've ever seen. Get the 2023 hybrid and save yourself some money and some weird stares from people going, is that a Subaru? That's really fucking ugly. It's ugly. All right, let's begin. Let's get the stats for this hybrid, get this over with, and then hit the wall. And by the wall, I mean the wall at the end of this segment on the video editor, because we have a few minutes left. Okay. Let's get into it. It has 90 miles per gallon MPGe, combined 35, if you're just running on gasoline alone. It has 148 horsepower, which is less than the 152 horsepower of the standard 2-liter, and again, less than the 182 horsepower of the 2.5 liter. For torque, it has 134 pound-feet of torque. Pretty basic. And then for 0 to 60, it has 8.3 seconds, as opposed to the around 8 to 8.2 seconds, so a little bit quicker for the 2.5 liter, and the 9.2 sloth speed of the regular one. All right. When I mean this generation segment has taken a long time out of me, it's taken a long time out of me. I mean, seriously, you can tell the difference in my voice. It's taken the life out of me, this section. It's so long. Alright, don't worry, the jingling keys are back. It's time to talk boring and be boring, because I didn't record for the segment, so it's just going to be me talking over this footage. So I hope you really like the Subaru Crosstrek, because you're going to be looking at it a lot. See, it's finally unobscured. Anyway, I only have about 8 minutes of this footage left that I haven't used already, so let's get talking. For the first XV Crosstrek in 2013, it started off at $21,000 and capped the limited at around $27,000 for the price you can expect now, used anywhere between $2,000 if it's really crap in the base model to around $8,000 for the limited. Now, moving on to the new facelifted second generation Crosstrek. That first one was for both of them, the XV Crosstrek and the first gen Crosstrek. Now on to the second Crosstrek pre-facelift. The base MSRP was around $21,000. You can expect to pay around $19,000 to $23,000 for that one. Remember, I wouldn't really get that one. Now moving on to the second generation facelifted, you can either get it anywhere when it was brand new from $27,000 to $34,000, depending on whether you got the cheaper trim levels or the more expensive trim levels. You can expect to pay around $16,000 for the base model that's been heavily used, to around $22,000 to $23,000 for higher trim levels and hybrids. For the third generation Crosstrek, you can expect to pay anywhere from $24,000 for the base model to $31,000 for the wilderness model. How did that get cheaper? And since it's very new, there are barely any used examples, so you can expect to pay pretty much $24,000 for like a semi-nice model. So there we go. Those are the sales numbers. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. And let's just go over a little bit more. What was my favorite generation and what was your favorite generation? What was your favorite generation? Yes. Well, if it's not what I said, then I disagree with it. My favorite generation, I think we all know, it's the first gen. The second gen just got heavy and slow and meh. I loved the 5th generation Impreza, which the second generation was based on. I love that car. But the Crosstrek, I don't know. I don't really like it. I much prefer the first generation over anything. And the first gen hybrid, that would be a really cool car. I never owned one, but it'd be cool. With that, thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video because I really enjoyed making it. And 33 minutes, that's going to take so long to export. I'm so sad. This is sad me. All right, I need to stop talking. Goodbye. We're running out of footage.